Welcome to the best half-hour basketball podcast in the universe. You're listening to the Basketball Fiends podcast, a proud member of the Our Esquina Podcast Network. My name is Jesus Acevedo Jr., and with me, like he is every week, is Mr. Aguilera. His first name is Alex. How's it going?
It's going good, man. I usually don't get called Mister because I'm very young. I think I got called Mister once. I remember it was a little kid, and I just said, "Hey, my name's Alex," and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Alex," and I was like, "Ooh, don't do that." I mean, I say it to them like that, but in my head, I was like, "Ooh, no, don't say that." I was like 18. I was like, "Oh no, let's not start with that."
Your last name just it's perfect for like a teacher, like Mr. Aguilera. I have a question.
Oh my god, man! Like I mean, not that I ever had any aspirations to become a teacher, but like I might be that rare teacher that would just be like, "Don't call me Mister, just, just don't."
Call me A. Call me just A.
Just call me Alex. That's fine.
Call him. Well, you know who has a certain name that he likes to be called is Peacemaker. We're talking about HBO Max's Peacemaker original series from James Gunn. First of all, before I give you my Peacemaker fun fact, we can both agree that Warner Brothers and DC should just give the kingdom to James Gunn and let him do whatever he wants to do with it. And that's all I'm saying. I will die on this hill. He will turn that DC everything around. But here's my fun fact. Peacemaker. One of the greatest things that I've learned about Peacemaker and watching it, and that I love, is the intro song. The intro song from the band's called Wham. If I'm not mistaken, is like
that's Wham.
I know. I think I could be wrong on the name of the.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's Wham.
No, not Wham. It's a very similar name. But the fun fact is Wigwam. That's the name. Wigwam.
Okay.
WIGWAM. Two separate words. Wigwam. So they wrote this song, right? They wrote it in 2010, and if you hear the song, it sounds like if it was just pulled from the 80s, power rock. But it's such a good song, right? So, and the opening credits, Peacemaker and then the whole crew, they're doing their, little dance. But the fun fact is about the song, Do You Want to Taste It? And more specifically, the band, Wigwam. 3 weeks before the premiere of Peacemaker, the manager of the band, Wigwam, dropped them. 3 weeks before the Peacemaker show premiere. After the final episode of Peacemaker, the song Do You Want to Taste It by Wigwam was #1 on iTunes. So yeah, that manager is probably kicking himself in the nuts for having dropped this band that is on one of the best shows this year. So that was a fun fact for you, Alex. I know you were a big Peacemaker fan.
Man, patience is a virtue. I did not know that. I watched the show with my dad, and we always watch the intro because it's just like it's just so random. You're just like, okay, but it's fun to watch. You're just like, just the choreography is just so like it just encapsulates just sort of the feeling of the show, if you want to say. But man, that's funny though. Sort of like, I don't know, poetic justice kind of. It's like, all right, you couldn't have waited a couple more weeks, and it's like I know that manager's hella salty.
Yes, I imagine he is. Life is all about timing sometimes, Alex, and timing just didn't work out for that manager. It worked for Wigwam. And whose timing has also worked for finally is James Harden, who is now happily with the Philadelphia 76ers. He's paired with Joel Embiid, and his timing. Originally, before he was traded to Brooklyn, he wanted to go to Philadelphia to reunite with Daryl Morey and to pair up with Joel Embiid. At that time, the timing wasn't there. Now, in 2022, the timing was there as he was traded from the Brooklyn Nets to the Philadelphia 76ers. And Alex, let me just tell you right now, I am in love with the James Harden, Joel Embiid pairing. We've seen 3 games of them now, and it is just flowing like if James Harden has been there from the beginning. I'm all in. And it's interesting watching these 3 games. I'm like, this guy was injured? Because he's definitely not playing like he was injured, Alex.
Yeah, whether it's the injury or other things with James Harden that people talk about. I mean, I think it just goes to show that like this is the place that he wants to be, and he's happy to be in Philly. This is
It's interesting what a happy Harden looks like on the court.
right. Yeah, I mean it's fun to watch because it's like, hey, you see him ball out the way that I mean, as you saw with the years that he was in Houston and even those early years in OKC. He's in a situation where he is. I mean, he's still like the guy per se, but that's Joel Embiid squad, and sort of that pressure comes off of him to carry the load.
Yep.
It's just a great 1-2 punch combo, and I want to say it's their last game was against the Knicks, right?
Yes. At
Right
home.
at home, right? And I want to say he dropped like 26 or something like that. Like,
I
yeah,
think he was one rebound shy of another triple double.
okay, yeah. So I'm like trying to see. Yeah, I think. Well, he had 9 assists. He had 9
Oh,
rebounds.
9 rebounds. Yeah.
But I mean, hey, he was right there, an assist and a rebound away from that triple double. Joel Embiid had the triple double. Well,
Yeah.
no, he didn't. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He had a double double. He had the 12 rebounds and the 27
Quit lying
points.
to our listeners, Alex.
Sorry, I caught myself. Right, I caught myself. All right, chill out. But nonetheless, though, it's a situation that he wants to be in, and I think just that pairing between him and Joel Embiid, just allows him to be a little bit more of a facilitator. I mean, he can still score, obviously, but he can lean towards being that floor general that people kind of forget that he can be sometimes.
It's weird, Harden becomes more of a facilitator for a couple games, and people, some of the media's like he's changed his game, having never watched him in Houston when he was the facilitator. As soon as Mike D'Antoni was coach, once Mike D'Antoni became coach, he's like, James Harden, you are my point guard. Here's the rock. So ever since then, we've seen James Harden be a facilitator. But look, Harden is also doing things that I never or hardly ever saw him do in Houston, such as running to the corner for open shots, which is essentially off-ball movements. In that first game, we saw some off-ball movements, and I'm like, bro, where was that here in Houston? We could use
Right.
some of that, like, So he's doing more catch and shoot situation, which is not something that we saw a lot in Houston. We saw some of it in Brooklyn, but not a lot. But look, James Harden impact on this team is huge on the 76ers. It's going to make Joel Embiid's life easier because, players, I think I saw this list. I think ESPN put it up during I think when they were playing the Knicks in New York, that James Harden and Joel Embiid were among the top 10 players that get double teamed the most frequent. So it's kind of going to be like a pick your poison. If you're the opponent,
Right.
it's like, what do we do?
Mhm.
Do we let James ISO, James create, or do we let Joel kill us on the block? Because not too many teams have a good, solid, a big man that can defend. So one concern I do have is if having James Harden would diminish Joel Embiid's current MVP trajectory.
Ooh.
Because look, James Harden is a lot of help. That's a lot of help,
Right.
So I wonder if that may kind of push him back down to second or third place, as Jokic is starting to climb the ranks, and there's this young point guard in Memphis Grizzlies that's making the moving up the ranks in John Moran. So I wonder. But overall, Alex, I feel confident in our basketball Fiends guarantee that the 76ers will make the Eastern Conference Finals. I feel confident.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, man. I mean, that's actually an interesting point that you bring up about does the addition of Harden sort of affect Joel Embiid's MVP case? I mean, I think as the season goes along, I mean, he'll still you know be an MVP caliber type of player. Like I think he's still gonna remain in that conversation. But the interesting thing you bring up is that having the help of Harden, does that kind of bring him down a notch that elevates a Jokic, a John Morant, a DeMar DeRozan, another guy who's in the MVP conversation as well. Because
I love how you just threw the little, DeMar DeRozan in Chicago Bull. I love how
hey,
you just threw in there. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but I
right,
just
like
love how
I
you
like
threw it
I
in.
right. Like hey, I don't think the Rose is gonna win MVP, but I do feel like he should at least have his name thrown in there. So hence me throwing his name in. in the ring. But yeah, I mean, I think this is just like the boost, Philly needed. And also it kind of makes you wonder, had they acquired a guy like James Harden when they had that little playoff run. I think it was in 2019, that year that when they went into a game 7, with Toronto. So definitely like a big boost that they need for sure. And early on it looks pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. You know who looked pretty good also today was James Harden's former teammate with the Brooklyn Nets, Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant returned to the court tonight on Thursday night. We are recording Thursday night. You faithful listeners are listening Friday or Saturday or Sunday. But yes, he returned to the court. And the Nets badly missed Kevin Durant, Alex. Let's be honest. The Nets for most of the season, since Kevin Durant got hurt and since James Harden was traded, they've been playing pretty much with no stars per se. Kyrie Irving will play when he's able to play, depending on the city and the arena he's in,
Right.
uh, due to his unvaccinated status. But having Kevin Durant comes back is just huge for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, having said that, they lost a tough one to the Miami Heat on Thursday on Durant's night back. He had 31 points, 4 rebounds, and I mean, just 31 points, 4 rebounds. So it's a pretty good show out by him. The Nets were up by 16 at one point, but the Miami Heat, without Jimmy Butler, but then without PJ Tucker, they're missing a lot of players. I think the only solid players they had was Bam and Tyler. They came back on the Nets and beat them. So it's while the Nets are happy to have Kevin Durant back, I'm concerned still because right now they're 10th in the league. I think tied for 10th in the Eastern Conference, and there's only about 20 some odd games left remaining. I'm not quite sure. Um, I say all this to say, could we see the Brooklyn Nets in the playing tournament? That's kind of where I'm trying to get here,
Yeah.
as I'm losing my train of thought. But and I say that because they had Kevin Durant was back, but it's still going to be not a one man show per se because until Ben Simmons, we can see what he's going to do. At this point, it's going to be just Durant, and then when Kyrie plays, he plays. They're still good enough team to beat teams that are in playoff contention, but when they're facing against these playoff contenders like Miami, who was missing a lot of its players, they still lost even despite they having a big lead. So they got some work to do. The Brooklyn Nets
Yeah.
do, despite Kevin Durant coming back.
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, when you have a guy like Kevin Durant, like he gives you a chance to not be in the playing tournament, but the Nets have had their struggles this year, and I think now what we see is that they're very reliant on the Kevin Durant's, the Kyrie Irvings, the formerly James Harden, but now Ben Simmons. They're very, I guess, like top heavy, if you want to call it. Like now we're starting to see like, hey, they don't have like a ton of depth. I mean, like Seth Curry, like he'll get you some points, but he isn't necessarily a scorer per se. Because was I want to say like well, you said Durant had 21, 31 points, and I think it was like Bruce Brown was like their next leading scorer with 21 in their starting lineup. But after that, it was like Drummond had 8, Goran Dragic, who they just acquired, had 9. Seth Curry had 8. So I mean, a lot of Brooklyn scoring is gonna have to come from Kevin Durant. It's gonna have to come from Kyrie Irving, and once again, that's when Kyrie is available to play, at that. So realistically, when you look at it, it's gonna be Kevin Durant, carrying the load, and that's where it was nice to have James Harden when
Yep.
they were healthy, because once again it alleviates, excuse me, that pressure for Kevin Durant to be that guy. But now he's gonna really have to be if Brooklyn wants to have success going down this second half stretch in the season.
Yeah, it's tough because even when Ben Simmons plays, he's not a scorer.
Right.
He I mean he'll score in the paint when he drives in and he gets by his guy, but he likes to pass, he likes to facilitate. But it's gonna be tough because their shooters aren't as consistent aside from Seth Curry. They just lost Joe Harris, who
Yep.
was announced earlier today. He's out for the rest of the season. So Seth Curry was a good pickup, but you're losing something because he doesn't give you much on the defensive end. So you're gonna have to ask some of these younger players like a Cam Thomas to step up. He stepped up in games here and there. Now you're asking him to do it deep in the playoffs when he's a rookie still. So he's not used to
Right.
playing this much basketball in one calendar year. Um, so there's some worry about the Nets, but look, having Kevin Durant is a huge step forward for this franchise. I mean, a healthy Kevin Durant, any team always has a chance. You know,
Yeah.
he single-handedly almost beat the Bucks in that series. So there's always a chance that your team, if you have Kevin Durant, you'll win. Um, but staying in the Eastern Conference, now we're gonna switch to the Boston Celtics. So the Boston Celtics, they're climbing up the standings. Well, they were climbing up the standings before the All Star break, and they're continuing to do that here after the All Star break. Um, Here's what I found interesting, Alex. The Ringers NBA odds machine gives the nod to the Celtics as the favorites in the East. First of all, I have to call shenanigans on this, right? Because the Ringer is owned by Bill Simmons, who we all know is a huge Celtics fan. So I say that the odds machine was a bit skewed, you know. And so they're trying to be a little
Yeah.
tricky. Come on, Ringer. Uh, that aside, I will say the Celtics are starting to get it together. They have been getting it together. They had, and I know Jalen Brown just went out with an ankle injury, but reports are he could just miss a couple games. He missed Thursday night's game against the Memphis Grizzlies, which was a battle. MVP contender John Moran dropped. I was just looking at the box score. He dropped
He dropped 38.
38. 38. But they just couldn't get it done as the Boston Celtics. They came back behind Jason Tatum's 21 points in the fourth quarter. So it seems like to me, I see why the Ringer would say that the Boston Celtics are the favorite to come out of the East. I don't consider them that. I think they can be. Yeah, obviously they're talented enough. But I it's one of the things I find interesting in an NBA season. At the beginning of the season, everybody was writing off the Boston Celtics. And it's so tough. The season is long. It's 82 games, and it's so tough for any team to really be written off. But they're even talking about should they trade one of Jason Tatum or Jalen Brown because they were struggling. I think we
Yeah.
even talked about it in one of the episodes. They were struggling. New coach, it just wasn't clicking. All of a sudden, it seems like these Boston Celtics have always been this good because they're just flowing. It's a very fluid offense. I think the pickup of Daniel Tice from Houston was huge. Also, them not getting rid, but them trading away Dennis Schroeder, who seems to have opened up more of the game for other players. So I think Boston. Um, I mean, they're a contender because they have talent, right? But I personally don't see them in the Eastern Conference Finals.
No, no. I mean, it's not to say that they aren't capable of it, excuse me, but the point that you make is, or at least you're kind of alluding to, is that there's sort of this inconsistency with the Boston Celtics. You saw they came out to a slow start this coming year, and you kind of wonder, like, hey, they got Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, and yet they can't find good enough success where we think, hey, they should have been what they were in 2018 when they had made that Eastern Conference Finals run, and we haven't really seen that from them since then. So it's like, hey, should Boston already start thinking about trying to gain something from a Jalen Brown trade or a Jason Tatum trade, whatever you know the case may have been? And like you said, like, people just sometimes forget the obvious fact that it's a long season. It's 82 games. We've seen it time and time again where teams come out the gate slow, and it isn't how you start, it's how you finish. And now we're starting to see Boston sort of clicking now, getting things together. You got Jason Tatum, who is one of the best young scorers in the league, because he had dropped like 37 against Memphis tonight, right? So I mean, you know what you're gonna get out of him. Al Orford, nice solid veteran, maybe not as good, maybe not like in Atlanta, Al Horford, but nonetheless, like, Boston is a solid team. Like, I think they're a playoff team. Do you see them making a deep playoff run? No, but could they? I mean, yeah, just from the eye, well, not necessarily the eye test. You just look at the roster and it's like, yeah, that's a roster that could make a run. But once again, just the inconsistencies with them, doesn't really give you that type of confidence that they will.
Yeah, definitely. It's I now I'll say it again. It wouldn't surprise me because they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals
Right.
before
That year,
when they
we
were
didn't
young
expect them to that year
at all.
either.
at all. And they were on this run. Jason Tatum, I think, was his second or third year. Same for Jay. They were young. They were two,
Yeah,
3 years into their career. So it would not surprise me. But well, actually, it would surprise me in a way that I'm not picking them, right? Just because I'm on the Philadelphia 76ers train.
true.
True, right? I mean, it's the Philadelphia 76ers. Um, and then our last topic that I want to talk about today is Alex. We're gonna go from Boston to their longtime rivals, the Los Angeles Lakers, all the way in the West Coast. There is some trouble in La La Land, Alex, with the Lakers. I mean, I don't want to say we predicted it, but I hear something's beeping. Oh, you know what? I have my timer here on Google.
Oh,
So that means that it was time to switch the topic, which, hey, look, it's what we're doing. So
it worked out. We were on it. We
we
were
were on
on
it.
it.
I intuitively knew that it was time. So as I was saying, we talked about this at the beginning of the season when the Lakers made all these moves. They traded for Russell Westbrook, they signed Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, DeAndre Jordan. So the first thing I told you was this team is too old to. I think that was one of the first things that I said. This is like it's a 2012 Team USA. That's essentially
Yeah.
what they're trying to gather the 2012. So, and so far we are proving correct. This team isn't built correctly. And with that said, Rob Pelinka, league insiders say that he will not be back next season. I could simply say I have sources, but my sources are that the Lakers front office, the Lakers owners have seen enough, and they would not be bringing back Rob Pelinka, who, hey, oddly enough, he could be Rob Lowe's twin. If you've seen them side to
Yeah.
side, like, I've never seen them in the same room together. So hey, there's that. But yeah, I don't think Rob Pelinka comes back. What I do find interesting is who will take up that Lakers GM spot. And one name that I'm going to throw at you, it's a name that LeBron name has talked about. He talked about a lot during All-Star break. OKC, Sam Presti. He says Sam Presti is the
Mhm.
real MVP for how he's built the OKC, all the talent that he's discovered through the draft. And
Yeah.
LeBron's not wrong, right? He's
Right.
clearly not wrong. So I wonder how much it would take for the Lakers to poach Sam Presti from OKC. Because I feel like the Lakers will have to make a splash GM signing. Somebody that proven track record, somebody that knows how
Right.
to pick good players. Because Rob Pelinka, he ain't it. And even with their title winning year, which is the bubble year, no, it was the bubble season. It was an anomaly. But look,
Mhm.
they got a championship out of it. Rob Pelinka always has that on his resume.
Yeah.
I was the GM of a champion Laker team, but his time is up. And I think going back to what my hot take was during the midseason after the All-Star break was the Lakers. I think they're gonna make the play-in, but they're gonna lose in the play-in tournament.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, when it's the Lakers, I mean, the standards are very high, and when you come off the bubble season, whatever, if you want to throw an asterisk, anomaly, whatever you want to call it, like, it's a championship, and that's what you expect out of an organization like the Lakers, or what the fans expect, what the league, sort of has gotten used to at this point, is that at some point, some way, the Lakers are going to come around. They're just going to be really good, and they're going to go ahead and win a ring. What is it? Well, we're 2 years, after the fact, and they're barely scraping in to qualify for the playing tournament. And you look at the roster, a lot of big names, but outside of LeBron and AD, they're names that, excuse me, have sort of, many believe have passed up their primes. And it's, you know whether it's Palinka. I mean, I would say that LeBron has some influence as well. Like, I'm not saying that LeBron is solely to blame by any means. Um, but there's it's LeBron. Like, he's gonna have a say in who he wants around him. Very much so. And I mean, I know he had mentioned before, like, Clutch wasn't too happy that Palinka didn't pull the trigger on the John Wall deal. And once again, it's kind of like, hey, you look at Palinka too, like, hey man, like, Russell Westbrook hasn't been really good this year. Like, it just isn't working out. And I mean, if that was a deal that you could have gotten done, then just say, hell, it is what it is. If John Wall's a guy that can come in and you know be more productive than what Russell Westbrook has been, then hey, it's that's what you got to do. And so yeah, I mean, as far as with Palinka and just with the direction the Lakers are going, it's like, hey, we just won a championship a couple years ago, 2 seasons ago, and we came and we're barely, in the play-in tournament right now. Like something needs to change and something needs to change quick. And if it's the case where Palinka is kind of the scapegoat and that's what it seems like it is, then hey, Sam Presti ain't that bad. You saw what he did in OKC and you saw all the freaking draft picks he's acquired since then. So hey,
And look, it's also it could be said that it's not only Palinka's fault, right? It's also part LeBron's fault. I think there were rumors that he's the one that pushed for the Russell Westbrook trade. Uh, we clearly saw as soon as they made that trade, we didn't know why. They lost so many young players in the process, and also not signing Caruso. I do wonder whose decision that was ultimately.
yeah,
But look, during All Star break, James was talking a lot about Bronny James, Sam Presti, that he wants to play. Maybe return to Cleveland. So much so that Bill Simmons, once again, twice, one podcast, we're talking about Bill Simmons. On his podcast, this is what he said: LeBron spent all of All Star Weekend putting stuff out there, which was the Sam Presti stuff. He's gonna play with Bronny, this and that. Jeannie Buss, the owner of the Lakers, she got tired of it. So she said, Ben Simmons said that Jeannie Buss approached LeBron and said that he needs to stop it, that he can't undermine the process that the Lakers are doing, that LeBron James is under contract, and that they pretty much had a powwow. That's what he said on his podcast. So he just asked to this debacle, right? And here's one other thing. Doug Gottlieb on his show, he said that Kobe Bryant foresaw that LeBron James wasn't built for LA and what it takes to play there. This is what he said from the Doug Gottlieb show. He said LeBron was coming to town. It was already done, and Kobe Bryant said to me unequivocally, "LeBron does not get to know or understand LA, and he's not built for it the way I'm built for it." He said, Kobe said, "I took negativity and it fueled me. And when there was negativity with me and Shaq, it fueled me. It's like that's not what fuels LeBron. He's just built different. He's not the savage competitor that me and Mike are. And if you know who Mike is, that's Michael Jordan. But you should know when I just say Mike. So, and then Kobe Bryant went on to tell Doug Lawyer, like I want to kill. I'm the type of killer that wants to kill you and your whole family. LeBron just wants to be loved, wants to play ball, wants to win games, but he's not the killer that me and Mike are. And look, playing in LA or in one of these major prominent cities like a New York, like a Chicago to a certain extent, LA, there's a big spotlight on you, especially with this
yeah,
story franchise like the Lakers, and Knicks. Well, maybe Knicks because of where the city are playing, but Boston is up there as far as story franchises, and they come with a lot of pressure, and I think it's we've seen LeBron. He got booed a couple of games ago by the Lakers fans. So there was
yeah.
that clip that was circulating on social media where LeBron just seemed to give up on a play. He didn't get the ball. Somebody took a three. They missed a long rebound. Lakers got it back, and he still didn't get the ball. And he just looked like he just gave up, like he was just walking. You know,
Yeah.
so it's definitely uh, it's a Lakers debacle. That's all I can call it right now, and I just don't see how they fix it and make a deep playoff run. Pretty much.
Right. Yeah. Hey, they're in the thick of a lot of adversity right now, and it's like their backs are against the wall, and it's like, hey, like, all right, what do we do to get out of this? I mean, like, I don't by any means see the Lakers like winning the championship or making a deep playoff run, mind you. Like, hell, I wouldn't even be surprised if they don't make the playoffs. But when you got a guy like LeBron James, like, you know, the Lakers are probably, getting in the playing tournament, whatever. But, it's not a team right now that you see really doing anything. They'll hang around. They got enough big names that, you know, they can squeeze in there. But other than that, it's just like it's gotten to a point where like it's a debacle. They've got issues that they need to sort out, whether it be from a GM standpoint, which it looks like it's pointing that way, and restructuring this roster to um a championship contender, which they expect, especially when you got LeBron James on the roster. As soon as a name like that is there, it's like, all right, you should probably be competing for an NBA title pretty much every year. And once again, to the point of, you look at in 2020, they went and got a ring, regardless of how you view that championship. It's still a championship, and in the Lakers fan base, in their eyes, it's like, okay, well, we still need to be in that conversation. We need to be where Miami is right now. We need to be going at it against the Memphis Grizzlies, the Golden State Warriors, the Phoenix Suns. Like, the Lakers, should be in that conversation, or at least that's what they believe, but they aren't, and that's just the way it is. So they definitely have things to to sort out, and how they go about it, remains to be seen.
Remains to be seen. That was our last topic here on the 49th episode of the Basketball Fiends. Next week is our big 50th episode. Alex,
5-0.
5-0. We made it. We made it. Well, let's make sure we get there, right?
Right.
We're right on the lip. We're right on the edge.
Yep.
Now we need to make that leap to the 50th episode, Alex. What are your plans for this weekend, Alex?
This weekend I'm going to a fire game with my brothers,
Nice.
so that should be cool. Looking forward to that. Gonna go try and see the Batman movie on
Yes.
Sunday, hopefully. So yeah, I finally got like some plans that I can actually like share. Like, you asked that question, and I can finally say like something or two
Something
things
told me, I
finally.
was like, Alex, I feel has plans this weekend. I did not expect a Chicago Fire game in there. And if listeners, if you don't know, Chicago Fire says MLS, get with the program. But yeah, I did not expect you going to a Chicago Fire game. I actually went last week to the first Dynamo home game of the season here in Houston, because I cover the team for my site, thebayoucitian.com. You guys can check it out, thebayoucitian.com. That's a word that I just created, actually, Bayou-Citian. It's a word that didn't exist. It essentially means citizen of a Bayou City, of the Bayou City. So the Bayou City is Houston. So it's just another word for a Houstonian.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Right, Bayou City.
Interesting.
But yeah, so but yeah, but that's nice. The Chicago Fire, that's a good game, and of course Batman movie. That's probably what my plan's gonna be. Haven't decided if it's gonna be Saturday or Sunday when I go, but yeah, I got to go watch the new Batman movie.
I like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that's just, yeah, you asked what my plans are, and those are my plans. So
There you go. Well, listeners, I hope your plans for this weekend included listening to the Basketball Fiends, because we thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe. See ya.
deuces.